Hello, and welcome to this celebration of the 401 Richmond Career Launcher Prize. My name is Jennifer Bogle, and I'm the Communications and Community Animator here at 401 Richmond. I'm connecting with you today from our third floor meeting room. We're thrilled you could join today to explore the importance of fostering emerging voices through mentorship. I'll mention today that we have Connor as our IT wizard hiding there invisibly, so you may hear me call him out here and there, and some of the other panelists as we move forward should we need to prompt him. Awarded annually for more than 20 years as a platform for research and experimentation at a critical time for an ascending artist, the Career Launcher Prize provides a light-filled 500 square foot studio for 1 full year here in one of Canada's most dynamic arts facilities. I'm about to pass you off to 401's Curator of Special Projects, William Huffman. William will be taking you on a whirlwind studio crawl tour for the next hour. William is an arts administrator, curator, educator, and writer with a history of extensive involvement on both local and international cultural fronts. Ever present today as William signs in from Paris, France. And please keep in mind that with that, his Paris apartment connection may not be as high quality as if he was joining us at home today. So please be patient. He may freeze a little bit here and there, but he's there. We've checked him. We should be good. William has spent a large portion of the last few decades inside 401's halls, starting with his time as director of A Space Gallery, one of 401's first gallery tenants, and as a funding partner for many cultural organizations residing in 401, while he worked in senior leadership roles at the Toronto Arts Council and at the Canada Council for the Arts. He manages the 401 Richmond Career Launcher Prize residency, conducts 401 building tours, and is 401's curator for Nuit Blanche, among many more cultural programs delivered in the building throughout the year. Currently, William is the marketing director of Dorset Fine Arts, the southern marketing arm of the West Baffin Eskimo Cooperative. William will be hopping from Paris over to Estonia, to the studio of Britta Benno, an international laureate, lecturer, printmaker, visual artist, and all-around alchemist of layers, textures, and media. Britta was recently hosted at the Cotton Factory in Hamilton as part of the Hamilton Arts Council's European Artist Exchange. From there, William will bring us back inside the halls of 401 to the studio of Howard Podesva. For almost 30 years, Howard has exhibited his work in Canada, the US, and abroad. His work often begins with personal history as a catalyst for meditations on art historical legacy, physics, theories of perception, and the state of the world. Howard has been a tenant at 401 Richmond since 2010 and has always prioritized the role of guide and mentor. Stephen Tucker is 401's current Career Launcher Prize recipient and endeavors to explore chaos, organization, and intuition through sculptural assemblages that unite disparate techniques, including rug tufting, woodworking, painting, and direct sculpture. In 2021, he completed a Bachelor Honors degree in craft and design, specializing in textiles from Sheridan College. Amanda Mccavour is a Toronto-based artist who works with stitch to create large-scale embroidered installations. Amanda holds a BFA from York University, where she studied drawing and installation, and an MFA in fiber and material studies from Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia. And so without further ado, over to Mr. Huffman.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Always a pleasure to be here. And thank you for those really amazing introductions. And it's a pleasure in these circumstances to be the least interesting person in the room. What a great group. And it's a real thrill to have you guys here. And thank you so much for agreeing to participate in this discussion today. And thanks to 401 for the ongoing opportunity to host these kinds of engagements and to let the public know what goes on in the building. And this is one of many interesting and exciting things that happen at 401 Richmond Street. And so I encourage everybody to certainly visit the space and to always tune in to the YouTube channel to discover all of this exciting activity. And again, thanks to all the guests following us on YouTube right now, and as the viewers of what we're doing today. As Jennifer mentioned, we've got 3 amazing studio tours, mini studio tours, and we're going to sort of talk about the idea of, the spirit of the Career Launcher Prize. And that really is about mentorship. It is about providing resources for emerging voices. It's about fostering new creativity. And we'll have, sure, lots to say over the next hour from our participants about what that looks like to them. And so what I wanted to do was maybe open this up right away to one of our guest speakers, Britta, and you're joining us from Estonia. And so I'm closer to you than I am to the rest of the group in Toronto. So that's kind of a unique and interesting thing. And I'm wondering if you can perhaps, we've had an introduction certainly about who you are in general. If in your own words, you could talk about your practice, you could talk about, your evolution, and you'll show us some work actually. We have the benefit of joining you in your studio. And then I've got maybe a few questions for you about some of your professional influences and how you view the idea of mentorship. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Britta.
All right, thank you. I will share my screen maybe. So if I introduce myself, I also introduce the works I'm talking about. So, hey, I am a drawing and printmaking artist, constantly extending the fields and combining the conventional media with unexpected layers. I have been imagining post-human landscapes for some years now, depicting site-specific buildings from the city. I create the artworks and placing the buildings in a new environment, where fauna and flora has reconquered the landscape again. I wonder what really is a land. What is a landscape? Is it just the soil we are walking on? The terra is taken as a fixed entity, as a solid background, nicely folded curtain of the play. I monsterized the shape of the land. I deconstruct its shape and then recreate the forms by drawing, layering memories as a dream. Stain becomes as important mark as intended line. I animate the earth as an uncertain form of becoming, constantly changing the shape, wobbling as a tongue, changing its state, never still as a clay. Landscape becomes an abstract shape, becomes a creature. During the Hamilton's Art Council's European Artist Exchange residency that recently ended, in the colorful, still green autumn, with its plastic advertisement signs of the urban horizontal space, twisted my cliffy or my climate fiction in a little different direction. As I sensed the weird being in a film like floating, ruthless hovering, light as a plastic bag in a wind, I started to look for a connecting link in multi-faced mosaic-like society in Canada, where everyone is a visitor really. I found the buffalo plate to be the comfortable uniform, the safe blanket to cover when feeling lost or a need to hide, as a warm, cozy womb, a landscape, an ornament that masks the differences. So here I show the pictures actually taken in Hamilton. I also played a little with the shape of the cotton factory and the typical brick houses nearby. And I was thinking of the holes in landscape as the inverted shapes of the mountains. The falls around Hamilton presented me literally the layering of the earth. And the layers of the earth are as the layers of the print. So the landscape directly illustrates the printmaker's way of thinking, writing, and doing in layers. The stay in Hamilton was perfect because the wording and thinking about the future didn't pass only in silent artwork production, but in a dialogue with local artists and art workers. New ideas, new solutions occurred when imagining, talking, and writing. So if we talk about mentorship here and influences, I must say that there were many people who certainly influenced me, my thinking, my directions. And working with and learning from the technician artist Lane Groeneweg and his smokestack studio in the cotton factory will definitely influence the way and what I do in my art practice in future. I also visited and printed shortly in 401 Richmond House in Open Studio Toronto with the master Beauty Tong in this. And in this picture here, the curator Rebecca Travis is choosing from the photolithos I had opportunity to do there. So these are also monster lens. And I will present the artwork made in and about the Hamilton residency soon in my upcoming solo exhibition in Estonia in January. Becoming of the Shape of a Land, it is titled. And if to talk about the influences, sure my teachers from the art school and from the Estonian Academy of Arts are the most important. Printmaking department have been led by strong artists, and now I am proudly working there as a technician and a supervisor. So the academy and its supervisors, who are also maybe the most well-known artists here in Estonia, have given me the push and the strong support for many years. So about this, maybe I'll show you quickly around also what is going on right now. I will stop the sharing and give you like a very little tour with my camera right now. So you will see what I'm doing right now. I just have built a table. There's a camera and lights and many class tables, and I'm making an animation there right now. It's a cut out animation, again like an experimental new technique for me. And here you see also paintings or hybrid drawings on a canvas that are not ready yet. They are on a process. The exhibition is coming soon. And yeah, here you see there is hiding a printing press. So I have my own printing studio here also. And the canvas is on a wall, still making of, and the copper plates for printing and some other works also. So I have a little, not very little, I have quite normal sized studio room here in Estonia, also in a factory. It was a rubber boots company before. So that was the really quick tour in my room. And yeah. And the short introduction.
Can people hear me?
I hear you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for this amazing and really complex. And I certainly want to know more about your work in that very interesting introduction. And I think you said a few things about the residency program. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of that residency for you? And I guess maybe some of the exchanges that you had while you were today.
Sorry, I don't know if I heard you correctly. Did you answer? Did you ask about the influences?
The Epcot factory, the residency, and maybe a little bit more about some of the exchanges that you had and some of the benefits that you have taken away from that experience. Maybe you asked about the cotton factory residency, the connections and the relationships I had there. Yes, indeed.
So yeah, it just ended. So I'm still okay. I'm kind of like landing now from the month-long flight, but there was so many like different connections, and at first I have to of course thank the main organizer and sponsor Robert Seidler, who kind of like who also organized like many meetings for me. So, and also the opportunity to print there. So I had the chance not only to draw in my studio room, but also make a like really cool, really high-tech screen prints and smokestack studio, and I met also like a lot of different artists there, and think how much it will influence me in future, both conceptually and how does this relationship go. I think will be found out in future. Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about just, we're wrapping this up with you, so just in some closing remarks about this notion of mentorship and this idea of the importance of, I guess, peer relationships, intergenerational relationships.
I assume you asked about relationships and the sorry,
my audio might.
I kind of like imagine what you asked. I think it's like by making art is it's I was thinking about it that we are talking about career, and career is I find it very strong word or a hard work for as being an artist. I think that I don't know how much it is career or it is a way of living. So there's like everything is connected to your art practice, and making art is always an honor, always and always affected by the relationships and the experiences. So also the residencies, you can't like over estimate their influence, and there's always the chance, the little random paths too, like just some things just happen. So yeah, was also one thing I also wanted to show you before I finish, maybe, as I showed you like really like quickly the animation table I have built. So maybe I'll show you like 20 seconds long first trial of this animation that I'm building on. So here you see different textures and different layers moving around. But yeah.
Well, hopefully you can get my audio again. Excellent. Well, thank you, Britta, so much for providing us with that overview. Really a thrill to see your work, and congratulations on the residency at Cotton Factory. And we look forward to seeing future endeavors.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me here. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Really cool to be in this group. And Richmond 401 is at least as cool as Cotton Factory. Yeah. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thanks. And now we're going to move on to a little closer to Toronto. We have Howard, and Howard, if we can get you on the screen, and I'm going to kind of put you through the same regiment of things. I want to talk a little bit about who you are, what you've done, your professional trajectory, and maybe we'll see some work, huh?
Sure. Everybody see me here? Hi, everyone. Thanks, Britta, and thanks, Will, for inviting me. It's kind of exciting to me actually right now because I have a whole new sort of series of work I haven't shown anybody yet. So it's just suddenly I'll be showing everybody this at one time. So that'll be kind of fun. I don't want to talk too much about my past because I want to kind of show you around the studio, but very, very briefly, I guess. I've been pretty tied to the the building here since I've been here, and I don't even remember how many years this is, but it's probably too long to count now. I've actually used to show at the Winnick Gallery, which was right downstairs here, which was pretty amazing. You make the paintings up here and you just throw them in the elevator and show them downstairs. And more recently, my work is actually about the studio itself. So I'll kind of get into that in a few minutes as I start to get down there. I start to show you around. But, you know, I guess like everybody, my world has shrunk. And so instead of kind of trying to take in everything around me, in a couple of shows ago, that was a show called A Brief History. And I really literally tried to take in almost every subject matter under the sun in that. I really narrowed my focus and right down to just the world of my studio itself, which is, you know, what as I start to show you around, it'll be kind of the work that I'm doing. So just to kind of get you into where I've been, the work that's behind me is from a series I did, and to get to the, I guess, the subject of mentorship and so on, it's directly related to the whole subject of teaching. So I'll just show this book here. This is the book that I use actually as my source. Just to, I guess, sort of the synchronicity of things too, when you're in a building like this in 401, I was working on a show, I was going to be at the Birch Contemporary Gallery. I had a show all kind of ready to go. It wasn't what you're seeing behind me right now, although it was sort of kind of related. And Bob Chandler, who was an artist in the building here, happened to be coming by at the time. And he brought this book to me. It's a book by a fellow called Thompson in the 1920s. 1929, and it's a book for teachers on how to teach kids. I'm talking like, you know, like high school kids, or I think maybe even elementary school, how to teach them how to paint simple objects in pastel. I'm not a pastel user, but I sort of adapted these for oil. And it seemed like a good thing to be doing after the tumultuous times the world had actually been through Trumpism and elections down south and various refugee crises in Europe and around the world that my work had very much been dealing with up until that point. And the idea of just focusing in back to basics and taking this book that Bob Chandler brought to me and just trying to go through the exercise. That's the exercises in the book seem like sort of a perfect thing to do. So this is an example of one of the exercises. There we are there. And behind me, I guess I'll start to show you. Let me just flip the camera here at the painting that resulted from that. So there is the painting. To give you an idea of the scale of that painting, I'm just going to go back there and stand in front of it. Sorry, folks. I get the camera angle right. Yeah, so that's kind of that's the painting. And where that sort of came from, or how I kind of arrived at that, is that that's sort of an assembly or a putting together of all of the exercises that I had been doing up until then from that book. So this drawer is a drawer of those exercises. And so the exercises are basically take a piece of paper. By the way, here's one actual piece of paper, one of my subjects, and wet it, dampen it, wrap it around something until it dries and stiffens, and then do a painting of it. And what it is, it's really about very, very, very close looking. He's trying to teach the children, and also, I guess in this case, me as well, to really, really look closely at things. And that's something that I guess you might say I had not been doing up until then. My work had been a little bit more, almost, I guess, if I would say there was probably any background, it would be abstract expressionism, or even not necessarily abstract, but sort of neo-expressionists. And this was a turn to a very different type of way of working very, very closely and very, very carefully. I was guided by Giorgio Morandi. Those of you who don't know him, he's a 1890s to 1964 Italian painter. And he said he was famous for his still lifes, very simple still lifes of just simple objects around him, which has inspired me quite a bit. And he said that to achieve understanding, it's not necessary to see many things, but to look hard at what you see. And I took that very, very seriously. And all of this is really, when we're looking at these when I'm looking at these things, I'm just looking at a very, very simple paper. But the purpose of the exercise is to see, what are those just tiny, tiny differences that happen between front and back, left to right, as you move around an object. I took this sort of idea and this sort of way of working and started to apply it to some other things as well. And so we have these works over here, for example, which are kind of fun. So what I'm showing you right now are actual stones. I've been doing some sketches of these, like what you see here in this book. And the idea was to sort of approach landscape this way by, as you're walking around, instead of actually doing the landscape, why not just pick up a stone and, do a painting of that. And that's sort of the landscape for the day. And what happened here is that one day after doing all this very hard work, my partner, Joy Walker, did some rubbings of the very same stones and left the rubbings with the stones themselves. And I looked at that and I thought, oh God, like that took her about probably 5 seconds to do. It took me many hours to do. And so I kind of riffed off of that and I did these. And what you're seeing now, for example, here, these are paintings, right? So it's a painting of the stone, sitting on the piece of paper with the rubbing by Joy. So in terms of mentorship, there is also mentorship with your partner if your partner just happens to be an artist and you collaborate together. And I think that's sort of a way also where influence sort of moves around. This whole idea of working still life is something that for me, really began, or does begin for me with my dad. My father was, amongst other things, but very much so, a still life painter. It's a subject that until recently I have avoided, and partly because he was really so good at it that I just could, didn't dare even touch it, and partly because it was also hard for me to kind of get into it. And this whole interest in doing this didn't really begin with Bob Chandler and his book. I started to get interested into this before the show that I had at the Winnick Tech Gallery called Soul of a Shoe. And it's a show that looked at this whole idea of mentorship and legacy, in my case, in a very, very personal way, through my father, who was an artist, and my grandfather, who was also an artist. And so we also included works by them in that show. So this is sort of just before and after that show. It was my dad's last year alive. We knew that he was ill with cancer, and he started giving me lessons in still life. And it's really the first time I really, really sat seriously to take lessons from him. And one of the things that he was trying to teach me then, and I was a reluctant student, was this very thing that I mentioned about Morandi, to look really, really closely, at what I'm seeing and really pay attention. This is a painting just from that, of actually my father at that show, talking to me about, about it. My brother Jeremy is taking the photo. He's the person on the right of it, on the right here. And behind that is actually some self-portraits by me. So it's very, very meta. This is a shot of, or a painting of my father teaching me how to paint still life. And just for fun, I thought I'd bring this in. This is actually me showing my father my paintings when I was a kid, painted by my dad. So I guess you could say, yeah, a little bit of mentorship stuff going on there. And I just kind of want to take you where I am now, because I know we don't have a lot of time. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to mention too, in terms of all of that, that naturally, of course, you can't talk about still life without really talking about the, Netherlandish painters, Belgian, Flemish, Dutch, And so, I look at them also very much these days. In particular, I've just sort of recently found out about an artist I wish I knew about earlier. Her name is Clara Peters, and she's from the late 16th century into the early 17th century. And what I like about her work, or what I relate to it, is more I guess the thing now is just it's very, very contemporary composition where everything is head on like a specimen, very much like you saw in my own work with those stones. She used her everyday materials around her and put them in sort of odd positions. And she also had a tendency to include her own self-portraits and just sort of sneak them in there, which you'll see is something that I've also started to do. So we'll just show you where I'm at now. So what's happened now with me since the pandemic, as I mentioned, is that my world, like my subject matter, is literally where I'm spending my time. And fortunately, because I don't share a studio here, it's been safe for me just to, put on my mask, come in here, and I've been here, most days. And so this is my world. So this painting kind of begins with my palette, part of my world here right now, the table that it's on, a painting of my painting, this painting from my last show, the one that we saw earlier. And then it's that painting on the wall, and then it's the wall and the floor and the tape and everything else. So that's kind of, where I've been playing around. This is the more recent work. Again, incorporating everything in the studio. I mean, it's down to, the crack that you see there is actually a crack somewhere on the studio floor. I recently had a leg injury, so I found myself very close to the floor. So the floor of my studio kind of takes on big importance in these. And you'll see up here also, this is a painting of a painting, and it's a quotation. The quotation is from, from Magritte. I don't know why his name just suddenly slipped me. So Magritte's very famous for doing sort of surrealist paintings. I actually I wanted to put something, the view that I could see out of my own studio window, but didn't really work here for the subject matter. And I found this in a Magritte book, that scene. I thought, oh yeah, that is actually going to work for me. This is also, by the way, a quotation from one of his paintings, if I can get it here. It's a little bit hard to show things that are low. Oh yeah, right there. There we go. One of his paintings has a shard of glass, and then you sort of see the scene that would have been in that shard. And then now, I'll take you to where I'm at now. From there, I just, thought, all right, where do we go next? Well, one of the things that was really interesting to me was my palette itself. So I began by doing a painting of the palette. Just the piece of paper itself. I use these disposable palettes very often. And then this is the palette with the paint on it. Take it to the next step. And then sort of some of these last paintings focus more on the blobs of paint that are on there. And, I guess it was kind of the ultimate still life is to do a still life where your subject is the materials that you use to do the still life. So, basically with these basic colors, mostly red, yellow, blue, white, that's kind of sustained a life of work. Why not make that a subject? And then from there, I've been just playing around a little bit, sort of as I get ready to do whatever the next big piece will be. Here's one. This is a playing off of Magritte again. Magritte did a self-portrait where he covers himself, as you can see here. You don't actually see his face because his face is covered by a bird, sorry. So in my case, you don't see me either. And then this is another piece which pulls very heavily from Magritte. Again, it's using still life from my own studio, but the view out the window is taken from Magritte. And so that's where I'm at today. I've got a canvas stretched and ready to go, a large one. Don't know what it'll be yet. I'll take suggestions. So, Will, I guess that's my little tour.
That was terrific. And you can hear me now?
I can. Yeah. We got good voice quality right now.
I don't want to here in France with apparently. I'm going to leave my video off and make you the star. But I think something really interesting. There's a whole lot of meta going on in that work. So really exciting to see you exploring that approach. And you know, I think also you said a little bit of mentorship. It's a whole lot of mentorship on it. And it was really interesting to see, you know, to hear you talk about your partner and her influence on the work, and the fact that you have peer-to-peer mentorship, and at the same time, you're able to demonstrate the importance of intergenerational relationships when you were talking about your father and your grandfather. So really beautiful poetry in you know, describing how the subject at hand.
Yeah, thanks. Was there a question? I got to the remark, but I didn't hear if there was a question.
A few just observations, Howard. You did a great job.
Yeah, well, you know, when your parent is an artist, and I don't know how many people listening here would, you know, have this as an issue in their lives. It's a mixed blessing. The plus of it is, of course, you just have this tremendous legacy. The hard part of it is that you have to find your own way when you've got a very strong presence in front of you. And so I would say probably for many years in art school, I spent my time trying to sort of, you know, fight that just so I could figure out what my work was about. And at one point, though, I kind of flipped it around. And I thought, no, this is kind of interesting. Why not actually look at it and make my relationship to the legacy actually the subject of the work? And it kind of began really with going to Madrid and seeing a work by Velázquez, a very famous one called Las Mañanas, and being so struck by it that I couldn't do anything else afterwards but just paint version after version after version after version of it. You know, I saw that there were many other artists who were similarly struck by it, and I thought, this is an interesting phenomenon. Let's do a show about this phenomenon. And that kind of set me on my way for many years, taking me all the way up eventually to my father, and now even more directly to colleagues, like, you know, collaborative work that I'm doing with Joy.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Howard. This has been a real treat to understand more about your work.
My pleasure.
And in my case, your work. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
And now we're going to on to Stephen, who this year's recipient of the Career Launcher Prize. And Stephen, you're occupying your Career Launcher studio at 401 Richmond Street. And we are looking forward to seeing what you've been working on.
Hello, and yeah, thank you, Howard and Britta. That was both really inspiring, and I think a good lead into my work and some of the things I'm thinking about. So I don't know, I guess I'll start the tour right away since we have discussion coming up. Just gonna flip my camera.
Some of the things that you've been working on, and we'll enter into the discussion with you and Amanda. Perfect.
Okay, great, perfect. So this is a wide shot of what is going on in the studio. When I started here, I was looking at woven structures, thinking about something that's super mathematical and involves a lot of rules, but going at it from a kind of irreverent, free perspective, and just letting weaving happen with no rules and looking at the forms that can come out of it. So these were my first kind of exploratory pieces. More so kind of little sketches and practice, and also playing with different materials that you don't usually weave with. So this is steel strapping painted, and then those are just cut paper strips. And then I moved into different building techniques, some paper mache and some just really rough assemblage, and thinking about found objects and the forms that can come from that. And then I move into sort of my, I guess, more serious works or things I've spent a lot more time on thinking about. And it is all with found materials. I think a lot about the life that's like in each of the materials and what they've all been through before they came to this place, the potential in each thing. And yeah, so there's one piece, and these are all still like very much in progress. I don't think anything is quite complete yet, especially in a color format. But yeah. And I'm playing with the idea of usefulness versus kind of like a decadent anti-usefulness. So I'm looking at creating functional furniture or things that are furniture size but have no purpose. So yeah.
Really, really interesting. So I had the pleasure of seeing this in and I just before I'm going to ask what kind of man in the discussion with you about the practice and your own. I did want to mention to your design TO initiative.
I didn't quite get that. I'm sorry.
Your design studio initiative that's putting up for a while.
I didn't quite hear that either, Will.
Oh my gosh.
I heard that.
I'm so sorry. It's unreal thing with the internet. Right now, is that?
A little bit. Should I jump in and ask Stephen some questions, Will? Is that?
Yes. Yes.
Sure. Okay. So, hi, Stephen. It's so nice to see you. I'm joining you. I'm joining you from Sheridan College, where we met, and it's so exciting to see your space and what you're working on and sort of continuing with. So, some of the themes that you were working with at Sheridan during your thesis year were themes of or methods of chance and improvisation and play. When I'm looking at your works in your studio now, I'm also thinking about flow. And I wondered if you could describe that a little bit more, maybe your working methods and how you approach the different sculptures, thinking about improvisation and that sort of thing in your process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's just like, that is how I have to go about making. I think when I sort of had like a breakthrough in how I make things during our time at Sheridan, which was, when there's so much going on and you're thinking about concepts and ideas, it's really tough to know how to start, where to start, or, what to do. And I find like holding on to like my perplexedness and just making through it is like the best way to go about things. And it's like I learn more from making than I do kind of figure things out in my head and then try to materialize them.
That's great. I also wanted to ask you about your combinations of materials. So I've seen there was a lot of like rug tufting and sort of combinations of building materials in your thesis work. And I wondered if you could describe how that might be shifting or changing as you're working in the studio at 401.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like I do want to pull in some more textile stuff as I move through this year. But I think the initial phases was this kind of like freedom of being able to do whatever I wanted and wanting to explore more things, and I am finding it's not on purpose, but there is like a textile element that like my brain has, I guess, been wired in that way, like where I think like I'll do something, I'll think of how to make something, and it always ends up being like I'm manipulating some fiber and then maybe petrifying it. So it's like becomes this harder thing, but it does still factor in. But yeah, I'm working with, I thought a lot about my last project about how much plastic I used, and I'm still using resins and things like that, but I'm thinking a lot about what that means, I think. So I'm using as much like post-consumer stuff as I can. And I found that really interesting as well. Just like packaging styrofoam and things like that all have this really amazing like architectural appeal to them. And they're actually such interesting, cool shapes that you would never, I don't know. Yeah. I think there's a really cool formal quality to these like utilitarian objects that nobody really wants, and just, yeah.
Yeah, interesting to see those incorporated, and also interesting to see sort of the textile bent in the approach to materials, but using all sorts of things. Another thing that I wanted to ask about specifically related to the residency is in our last year at Sheridan, the thesis students worked in many different places, and there was a lot of improvisation with spaces. And something that's really wonderful to see in this tour is some of your work existing together, like having the space to sort of be in a single room. And I wondered, Stephen, if you could talk about how things might have shifted or changed because of the space at 401. Are there different approaches since you've got the room to grow into this large space?
Yeah, I mean, there's like just like this ultimate freedom really to kind of do whatever I want, which can feel, it's amazing, first of all, but like it can be overwhelming in a sense as well. Like there is a way in which like sometimes I feel like limitations in general kind of make your path clearer, you know what I mean? So really having like this amount of freedom, it's an amazing thing. But it's also something that kind of makes me have to find my center on my own more and like focus and yeah. But yeah, generally I think having everything exist together, the conversation between them is like so much more apparent, and yeah, can think of things as a total work of art together, really.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, so wonderful to see the space. William, do we need to move on to the next thing?
Well, actually, I'm going to just jump in if you can hear me. And again, I'm sorry about the lack of internet or the quality of the internet as I desperately try to jump in. No, and I just want Amanda maybe talk a little bit about as an instructor and someone who you directly involve yourself with the development of practices at very early stages, and you talk about what that means to you and how you approach that.
Sure. So how I approach sort of mentorship in my role as an instructor at Sheridan during thesis.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, for me, teaching thesis at Sheridan College has been one of the most amazing classes I've taught, because it's a time for students to really talk about or work on things that they determine. And I think a lot of the time students bring themselves and their interests to the assignments. And it's sort of my job to support that through research or conversation. And I know with Stephen, you found this way of working that really worked for you. And that's something that's so exciting, to sort of come into this method and approach that really is activating. So for me as a mentor, I feel like it's my job to respond and like continue a conversation and to sort of support in whatever way I can. But a lot of it is the artists and designers, these students really pushing themselves and being curious and bringing themselves to their projects.
And I think it's, this is kind of both of you, it's an observation. I initially it was when I looked at your work, it was in the context of textile, and I think that had a and I think, Stephen, that's really something about your work that I think about your practice and in fact your work, how curious it is about adapting the approach of multimedia in the context of textile, or expanding perhaps the meaning of textile, the definition of textile. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that in terms of maybe the relationship you had in your formative stages with Amanda as your instructor, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, like the textiles was within like the context of my program at Sheridan, like the most free and you had the most freedom to explore with color and texture and form, and that's sort of why I chose it. But as I sort of like navigate different contexts, and I'll say like I wouldn't call myself like a textile artist, is because I don't want to be responsible for following traditional techniques or like that. And I think Amanda and I had talked about that through my thesis here, and she's a bit of the opposite, where she comes from like a drawing and painting background, and sort of found her way into working with thread, like looking at it as line and space and etc. So there was just a lot of good conversation about the crossover of different worlds and how to move forward through things. And yeah, I think further in a mentorship sense, it is weird it's like an interesting thing to speak about in art and design, because there's like a lot on the individual, but the mentorship comes as like a particular way of helping people realize and hone their own vision, rather than kind of teaching or dictating a technique. And that's I think what I got with Amanda and my other professors at Sheridan.
And by extension, you're currently occupying that space, and I don't think it was someone breaking up as I was trying to mention it earlier, but you are working on designing TO initiative. Yeah,
so some of the bigger works in the studio are for a project called But I Don't Want Comfort, for Design TO. So yeah, they're some functional, some unfunctional objects. And another portion of it is sometimes a musician friend of mine, Daria, is in here, and we're extracting sounds from sculpture making and creating a sound landscape to go with these objects. And I mean, to me, I think meeting Daria was another mentorship thing. It's like horizontal mentorship, I guess, or if that makes sense. But when I say like I'm looking at things like objects, and like I see like all the potential of what an object could be, it just like totally blew my mind that like they also have these insane possibilities of sounds and everything, right? And I think my work is, to some people, looks like escapist, or it's really playful, right? And bright and colorful and whatever. But to me, it's not a narrative about escape or about like any kind of blindness, but rather that like these are the materials that are covering our earth and are everywhere, and they have so many potentials to be something different. So that's.
And I think it's probably safe to say that the scope and scale of what you're working on for Design TO likely wouldn't be possible without the space that you have at 401. And it's really, the beauty of this initiative is the ability to have those aspirations and to be able to realize them with the square footage that you've got in support of the program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and just everything. I mean, even, you know, meeting you and Jennifer, there's like so much of this project that I kind of like very blindly was like, I'm gonna do this thing, I'll figure it out. But like having all your help so far, the buildings help, and just like this really open, incredible environment that is basically like, you want to make it work, we're gonna make it work. So I mean, it wouldn't be possible at all. And yeah.
And that's the thing, that aside from the space that you're occupying, the community around you is really an important part of being at 401. Howard being, you know, certainly one of your colleagues in the building, and I think that really is the richness of 401, is the ability to have those interactions.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm also working on. Sorry.
No, please.
I was just gonna say, like, one more connection is I got like a secret mission the other day from Open Studio. So I think I'm, you know, kind of casually working on an etching with Pudi, which is, yeah, also very exciting.
These are amazing stories to hear always, and of course it shouldn't be surprising because this happens all the time at 401. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And this has been a thrill, and for me, you can't see me. I'm you know, gesturing, and I'm excited, and everything else. I should describe what I look like, so that gives you some sense. This has been a real thrill, as always, and thank you to everybody who is here with us, both our guests talking about the idea of mentorship and what that means to them, and also everyone who is listening to this, viewing this on the YouTube channel. And again, thank you to 401 for being able to organize this, giving the opportunity to these things out. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Jenna, and you can wrap it up.
That was great. Thank you, William. Thank you for moderating the panel today. Heartfelt thank you to all our panelists. I know I speak for everyone in attendance when I say that was engaging and inspiring, and underlines how pivotal mentorship is in any career trajectory. I'd also, Connor, you want to throw up our next slide? I want to thank our very good friends and allies at Beanfield Metro Connect, the telecommunications company that builds, owns, and operates the largest independent fiber optic network in both Toronto and Montreal. Beanfield has been close friends with 401 Richmond for a very long time, and we remain humbled by their generosity in supporting this important and vital emerging artist residency. And then Connor, if you can give us our last slide. We want to thank you for joining us, and please pay close attention to everybody's social media handles here. You can follow 401 Richmond and all of our other panelists' careers, so you know what they're up to and what they get and what they're doing in their careers. And you can come back to our YouTube channel anytime to rewatch this event and share it with your friends and colleagues. So thank you very, very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful night.